Welcome everybody to the Book Advisor Author Interviews. This morning I'm talking with Paul Scott, and he's an interesting character in a lot of ways. Most importantly for today's discussion, he's written a book, funny that, and it's called Beyond Agile, How to Run Faster, Smarter and Less Wasteful Projects. And there it is, very nice cover, Paul. They say you can't judge a book by its cover, but I think most people do.
Yes.
So welcome to this interview, and thank you for making the time to spend a bit of time with us.
Well, thank you, Jackie, and looking forward to the discussion with you.
Oh, great. Now, because this is all about books and authors, I just wanted to give the listeners a bit of a heads up about the book. You've actually just recently republished it, haven't you?
We have.
Great.
Yes. So we published first in 2017.
Yes.
At the back end of 2017, we actually launched it at an industry conference in Sydney in September of that year. It took us the best part of 9 months to write it and get it published. And as you know, Jackie, the reason why we wrote the book was because my business partner Andrew Walker and I were working in the digital software industry for a good 20 years, and we both shared the same frustration around how long it took to develop any software, and the process that most organizations adopt to create software was 30 years old. Even in 2000, it was 30 years old. And we wanted to change that and see if we could find a way to be more productive, to get working software in the hands of users faster. And Andrew was really the brains behind this. He developed a process of doing what was described as agile in an ultra agile way, hence the term Beyond Agile. Which basically focused on three things: involving users from the outset and all the way through the process of developing software, developing working software within 36 hours of taking the brief.
Wow.
Which was scary, and delivering to outcomes. So not really sort of working to a set of predefined features and functions, but really focusing on what is the outcome that we're seeking to deliver with each iteration of the software. And with that as the starting point, we then kind of went back to first principles and looked at the way that the original founding fathers of Agile in 2003 had written up the manifesto for creating Agile software solutions, and we worked with that.
Wow. And so for those who aren't in software development, what happened prior to that? Were people just developers going sequentially, and how long would a project typically have taken, and kind of how much would it have cost before you came on the scene?
Yeah, so it depended largely on the complexity of what was being built. But if you take something like a typical app on a mobile phone, using traditional methods might take 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, to get to a first working version of the product.
Wow. Yeah.
So and the process would be very sequential. So it would be, okay, so let's write up a set of requirements that we need to address, and to gather those requirements, let's go and talk to all the users and come up with every single use case imaginable, and then start fleshing out the project plan to work out how long it's going to take us to develop the solution that the users say they need. And let's work out how much that's going to cost. Let's get some funding, and then get that funding signed off, and then start on the design. And then once we've completed the design, start coding it. and then finally start getting involved with the users again and asking them to do some user acceptance testing, at which point we discover what we've developed isn't exactly what users wanted in the first place. So we have to go through a whole series of iterations to refine the end product before we can release it. So it's a very sequential, cumbersome, unuser-friendly process that takes forever. And then, of course, Agile came along. And what happened with Agile was that the guys who came up with the manifesto were all computer programmers themselves, and they shared this frustration that Andrew and I had around how long things took. And they just boiled it down to 4 founding principles, which was start developing working software day one, focus on interactions, not processes. So, you know, scrap that idea of having to gather all of the requirements and understand the end-to-end process. Think about the interactions that are happening between users and the application. The third part was about engaging the users and working with users throughout. And the fourth part was about focusing on an iterative approach that didn't require a long project plan. So don't worry about having a long project plan. Be prepared to pivot where you need to pivot because user requirements change, and be responsive. Don't feel that you have to do things in a prescribed serial manner.
So does that mean for someone who doesn't come from that kind of background that you get it to market and you just keep iterating it once it's out in the market?
Correct. And that's if you whether I don't know whether people notice this or not, but that is the way that most web applications and mobile applications work nowadays.
Right.
Is they are being continually improved, literally on a daily basis. And to give you an example, I did some work with booking.com.
Yep.
Oh gosh, it must be 7 years ago now. And they have a process of gathering user data. So how you and I wander around their website, looking at holidays and booking opportunities. They gather that data continually. They analyze it continually. I mean, they've got 200 data scientists working within the business who are basically looking for patterns of behavior, which will infer what they need to change, what they need to stop doing. And then on a weekly basis, they will literally, reissue the website, and they'll make changes during the week to continually improve the user experience.
Okay, so that's fascinating. So in your book, what's beyond Agile? So I presume that's kind of where most people are, and what's beyond that? And maybe just share with our viewers
yes,
key parts of your book.
So I think the reason why we wrote the book was we wanted people, and not necessarily the tech sector, but in people who have a need for automation and computer solutions, to consider how they go about actually specifying and getting those solutions delivered. So the whole purpose behind the book was to lay out the fact that there are probably 2 or 3 critical success factors to developing successful outcomes. Number one, you've got to have talented people on the tech side who are comfortable working with end users. Absolutely critical. So, and this is a tough one for the tech sector.
Yeah.
Programmers, traditionally, developers do not like to spend a lot of time with end users. They like.
They're the real nerds, and they want to sit there at their computer.
Well, look, I mean, it's what they're good at. They like problem solving. They like the programming process, and that's the thing they get a kick out of. And having to spend time with users is seen as, by a lot of people perhaps as not necessary. I've got a business analyst who does that, or I've got a project manager that does that. I don't need to spend time with the user. But what happens when you put when you find a developer who's got good communication skills, is naturally curious, who wants to understand what users are doing. When you put them in front of a user and actually start seeing the interaction work, where the user will say, well, actually, I quite like to have this button on the top right hand corner, because if I press on that first, then I can see the stuff down in the bottom left hand corner as it changes. And suddenly the programmer goes, oh, that's obvious. Why didn't we think of that? It gives them a chance to actually understand how the user mind works. So number one is this need to try and either find developers who've got that capability or train them to be able to do that. So a couple of companies that we work with, we took some of their programmers through a kind of a boot camp process to teach them how to use the principles of Beyond Agile. And it was a wonderful experience for them and for us, because you could see they were getting so much from it. They were thoroughly enjoying the process, and they genuinely felt at the end of it, wow, I can go and sit down with the user now and understand what it is they need. And I know how to turn that into a working solution. They get a real buzz out of it. The second thing is a change in mindset in senior management around how solutions get signed off and then developed. So in the traditional enterprise world, if they want a tech solution developed, a senior exec will say to their IT manager, right, go away and get a quote for this, and come back and I'll get the budget assigned and we'll put together a business case. That is a long-winded process and completely unnecessary, because you don't have to commit all of the money up front. You can actually, using digital software development tools, you can develop a pilot or a minimum viable product, as it's known, an MVP, for a fraction of the cost of the total solution. And actually what you achieve by having a working version in a pilot form is you achieve two things. Number one, you proved it works, the idea works.
Yep.
I'm getting some strange messages coming up on my screen. And you're able to put together a much more coherent business case, because you've actually got evidence that users will use this minimum viable product and see some benefit from it. So that mindset change thing is the second critical success factor. And then I think that the third one is trust in the process. So it's counterintuitive for some people to say, if you say to them, right, well, just give us the minimum that you need. Within 36 hours, we're going to have a working version of this or part of this product. And what we need then is to put it in front of users. So can you tell us, before we start doing the programming, we need to know where the users are that we're going to put this in front of within the next 36 hours. Because that's when the magic happens. That's when you start to get real input from real users about the thing that you're developing, that you can then continue to iterate as you're developing out the full and final product. So in our process, we involve users in the review of software, probably once a week, twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, if we're developing at speed and releasing versions of the product for them to try. So those are the 3 main key elements, really. The skilled individuals, different view around how you put together a business case, and working directly with end users.
And I think the really interesting thing that I take out of that, I guess me with my book hat on and target audience thing, is that, as you said early on, potentially this book is really not for obviously the kind of the tech heads in this, but it actually possibly is really more directed to the finance people or the senior execs or even the board, because in fact they need to understand this process, because they're the ones that are going to be assessing and allocating the money or the time in a broader sense. So if they're not understanding at a deeper level what's happening, they'd be less likely to engage that process. Would that be a correct summation?
That absolutely spot on. And just to underline that, Andrew and I did an analysis of 240 odd projects we did over a period of about 3 years, to determine who were the people, who were our biggest fans, the sponsors.
Yeah.
And more than 60% were financial directors or CFOs.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And the reason why CFOs became fans of the approach was because they didn't have to commit huge amounts of capital up front.
Yeah.
And they were getting concrete evidence of the business value way before the end of the project.
Wow.
So putting a business case together for them was easy, and they loved the fact there was tangible evidence of the business benefit they were going to get at the end of the project.
And
yeah,
that's it. And again, I deal a lot with board directors and C-suite, and I think people of a certain generation, Paul, perhaps are less up to speed on really what you're writing about and talking about, and providing them with a book that actually really gets them into a place where they can understand what the process is and why it is going this way would be hugely, hugely helpful.
Yes, and they are very, finance directors are very influential people in the business.
Yeah.
And if they go to a CTO or to a COO and say, look, we need to change the way we're doing software development. It's costing us too much money, and I don't really see what the business benefit is.
Yeah.
I want you guys to work out how you can do it in the Beyond Agile way. Let's see if we can work out how we need to train and motivate and manage our people to work in a way that's going to deliver these kinds of outcomes.
Great, interesting. I've learned a lot, which is wonderful. Now, I'd actually just like to maybe have a bit of a chat to you about some things about around the book and the book process. And I know when we were chatting before this, and I will get to that you said there were some outcomes that you weren't expecting. So we'll get to that. So obviously you wrote the book because you wanted to share your knowledge, I presume?
Yeah. Yep.
We did. And so what was the hardest part about writing and publishing the book?
Wow. So Andrew and I are two very different personalities, and we both have very different styles of communication. So the first challenge we had was, how are we going to write this book when we both have different styles and different ways of communicating? And I don't know who it was, somebody suggested to us we get a ghostwriter involved.
Yep.
And it was pure chance, actually. We were doing some work in Fairfax, and one of the people that we were working with was a junior product manager there that we were working with, called Grace O'Brien. And got talking to her, and she mentioned that her sort of side hustle was writing business books. And we thought, oh, it's interesting. So we sat down with Grace, and we talked about the book we were trying to write, and asked her if she felt it was something she could take up, and she very kindly agreed to work with us. So she was really the catalyst for Andrew and I, because I think we didn't really know where to start. We didn't know what kind of style of book we needed to write. We didn't really know, what kind of content we needed to put in there besides purely describing what we did as a business. And she understood us, and she really understood, the passion that we had for trying to get this process out there, this message out there to the market. So she was the person who, I hold largely responsible for us getting the book off the ground, was that she helped us in the whole process of design and delivery of the book.
And that's a really interesting thing, Paul, because a lot of the clients that I work with write their own book, but there are some people that I deal with that can't, or I've got a dyslexic client, so
yes,
or a time poor, so the whole process of actually finding someone to help you write your book is totally a good thing, and sometimes possibly even a better thing. So I think that's a really important take out. And tell me, what was the process like from once you had your kind of final draft, and there's a whole story to get to there, how did you go about the actual publishing side of things and then the marketing side of things?
Yeah, so we never wrote the book to make money out of the book. That wasn't our driving purpose. So the purpose behind writing the book was we needed to get this process down on paper in a form that could be accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
Whether that be a university student doing computing studies, a CFO in an ASX listed company, a developer in a digital agency, project manager. It's just, what's the mechanism for doing that? Well, it's a book. That is the most effective way of doing it, was our belief anyway.
Yeah.
And then, so it wasn't to make money, but it was to make it available and for us to have a talking point. So what Andrew and I realized every time we sat down with a potential customer was that we were having to do the kind of missionary sell, which was, why are we here? And this is what we do. And we managed to kind of shorten the sales process a little by saying to people, look, before we sit down with you, it might be a good idea if you read the book, or just, scan through it to give you a flavor for what we're about. And what that did was to change the whole dynamic of the first meetings that we would have with people, because they'd read the summary on Amazon, or they read the first 20 pages, and all of a sudden, they're as enthusiastic about this thing as we are, because they've read about it and they kind of get, wow, look what you did with Monash University and what you did with News. This is amazing. What a great story. So the storytelling, the whole storytelling idea has become incredibly popular in sales. Yeah. And a lot of sales coaching nowadays is about, what's your story? You've got to be able to have a narrative that is interesting to your potential customer. And that's what the book is. The book is a narrative of the journey that Andrew and I went on to get to the point of making a change, and then actually executing that change and seeing the results.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It's a very, very powerful sales tool, and a very powerful way of getting people engaged and understanding why you're doing it, what your purpose is. Why have you invested so much time, energy, and effort in doing this thing? Well, let the book do the explanation for that, rather than me tell you. You can read it for yourselves.
Yeah, interesting. And okay, so your book's out there.
Yes.
Has it done what you were expecting, or has it done more or less than what you expected? And what have there been any surprises with that?
I think it's achieved a lot more than we expected, from the point of view of raising people's consciousness in the industry about what this is. So anybody I've come into contact with who's read the book, either because we've sent it to them, or they bought it on Amazon, or one of the other book sites, or got it as an ebook, comes back and says, wow, this is interesting. Tell me more. I want to know. I want to know more. This is, there are two very detailed case studies in the book, but it kind of leaves a few questions open.
Yeah.
That causes people to want to have a conversation with you. So
right.
So we got a lot more response in that respect than we ever expected.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. And so how do you still use it? I mean, you must have obviously done an update and you've got your new shiny cover and stuff. So how are you, how is it selling, and how do you currently use it?
So I haven't looked to see what the sales numbers are like on the book, but the reworked version that we've just released, it has got some minor factual changes to it, and just to bring it up to date. But basically the book is very, very similar to the first version. So if you've already bought the first version, don't buy this one.
But that's a really interesting point, because I mean, you know, your first version's now, you know, 4 or 5 years old, but it's
4 years old, yeah.
yeah. So, but what you're saying is largely, it's still highly relevant,
Oh, yeah.
highly topical. So you've got 4 years of leveraging out of that book, and there's still many years to go.
Absolutely. It's matured with age, I would say.
Here we go. Interesting.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so the book's achieved, well, I guess achieved more than perhaps what you expected.
It has achieved more than we expected, and continues to surprise. You know, I'm getting LinkedIn contacts from people in South America, one in Iceland, another one in what was the other one? It's quite strange the other day. Oh, there's one from Taiwan. So that people are picking it up from, I don't know, probably, you know, the online bookstores, because we self-published. We didn't use a publisher. We published through Ingram.
Yeah.
And that's worked for us. You know, it's actually worked really well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Mm.
So that's really interesting. So before I get on to our quick quiz, so for people who are listening to this, particularly CFOs and I guess CTOs who want to, you know, get their CFO in the right headspace or mind shift, where can people buy the book?
So it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Those are the two main places that it's sold from. I don't think it's on any others. I'd need to double check on that.
Right. So it's not you're not selling it directly through your own website. It just is on.
No.
Yep. Good.
No. I mean, I can probably supply if people need it, but it's probably easier to get it through Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, that's been really, really interesting, Paul. And so we're just going to finish off. I've got a quick quiz that I like to ask everybody that's on the author interview thing. So, and it's serious, but it's a bit of fun. So we've got 7 questions, and I'll just roll them off, and I just want to get your immediate reaction to them.
Great.
So how do you read? Do you prefer ebook or print book?
Print. Every time.
Yes, gotta love you for that one. The best place for reading for you, the couch or bed?
Couch.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I read in bed, I just fall asleep.
Okay, now marking your books. Are you a page folder or do you write in books?
Oh, I don't do either. I don't like defacing books. I keep a notebook by the side of me. Usually, if I'm reading a business book, I'll keep a notebook by me. And the other thing I find myself doing increasingly is taking photographs of bits of text in pages.
Yeah.
And then reusing that. So in my notes section on my iPhone, I've got hundreds of pictures of various pages in books.
I'm an old-fashioned girl. I use Post-it notes.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me. Yeah. Okay, so what's your reading style? Are you read a few, skip a few, or do you read from beginning to end?
I'm a beginning to end kind of person. I'm sorry, completer finisher. Yeah.
Okay. Outside business, are you fiction or non-fiction?
I'm non-fiction. I'm actually a bit of a history buff. So particularly, so what I'm studying at the moment is Australian history.
I've got a great book for you.
From the First Fleet onwards. Yeah.
I've got a terrific book that I'll share with you later. In
Cool.
relation to sharing books, are you a hoarder or a giver?
So I used to be a hoarder. When I lived in the UK, I was a massive hoarder of books. I had, probably 1,000 books. When I moved to Australia, I took a different tack. So now, if I read a book and I really love it, I think about somebody I know who might love it too, and then I'll pass it on to them.
Wow, you're very brave.
Why?
I know I'm a hoarder, and if I really like a book and I think somebody else, in fact, I've done it recently, I go and buy another one and give them that book, and I keep mine for me.
I'm just thinking of the environment, you know.
I know, look, I know, but if I love a book, I probably want to go back and reread it. Or it's got tags all through it, so it's kind of like, yeah, no, I'm definitely Hoarder. Writing style, are you Oxford English or American English?
Oxford English.
What do you think about the Oxford comma? Do you even know what that is?
I don't know what the Oxford comma is. No, what's that?
That's interesting. It's in relation to where you put the comma before and after various.
Yes. No, I have come across this. It's Grammarly was annoying me.
Yes.
Intensely with this constant bickering around where the commas needed to go.
Correct.
So,
correct. Yeah, it's big debate. Big debate in punctuation world. There you go.
But grammar's made for that, isn't it? I mean, you know, there are so many different opinions around grammar.
Absolutely. And, yeah, I'm often having conversations with my clients around what dictionary they're going to use, you know.
Yeah.
You know, particularly American English versus, you know, Oxford or Australian English, because it has a big impact on your writing, but we could spend hours on that. Hey, Paul, look, thank you so much for your time today.
Not at all, Jackie.
Fascinating learning a bit more about what you do. And I presume you're still consulting in this area. I mean, what do you?
I am.
Yeah. So
Yes.
What's your latest gig? What are you currently working on? Or
I am very lucky at the moment because I'm working with two businesses where I'm able to evangelize the Beyond Agile approach and help people learn about the benefits of that. I'm working with Digital Village, who are based here at Work Club.
Yep.
Who are a contracting business. So they're putting together talented developers, project managers, designers with large, medium-sized enterprises who are looking for teams of people to do development.
Yep.
So I'm working with them, and then also working with a Microsoft startup called Evergreen Digital, who specialize in digital workplace consulting. So they're really focused around anything to do with Office 365 products and services. And again, Microsoft and particularly that suite of products, is another domain where Beyond Agile thinking is beginning to get a lot of traction.
Sounds fascinating. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And,
not at all.
I've learned a lot, which is one of the reasons I love doing what I do, which is working with authors on their journey. So really appreciate your time, and a call out to CFOs and CTOs to go and buy the book. So look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn and learning more about what you do, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Jackie. Really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure.